Billionaire wife died years ago. Every month he sent her mom $10,000 until he found out. For 5 long years, billionaire Kwame Adeyemi never missed a single payment. Every month, on the same date, exactly $10,000 left his private bank account and went straight to one woman, Madam Eunice Mensah, the mother of his late wife. To the world, Kwame Adeyemi was a powerful African billionaire. Oil investments. Tech companies. Luxury homes in Lagos, Accra, and New York. But inside his heart, Kwame was still just a man who had lost the love of his life. His wife, Ama Mensah, had died suddenly 5 years ago. At least, that's what everyone believed. Cancer, the doctors said. Fast. Painful. Unfair. On her hospital bed, weak and barely able to speak, Ama had held Kwame's hand and whispered her final request, "Please, take care of my mother." Kwame promised. And for him, a promise was sacred. After Ama's funeral, while people slowly moved on, Kwame stayed stuck in that moment. Every payment he sent felt like a way of saying, "I still love you." $10,000 a month. Not because Madam Eunice ever demanded it. Not because she asked. Kwame did it because guilt lived in his chest. Because he was rich, and his wife was gone. One quiet evening in his modern penthouse overlooking the city lights of Accra, Kwame stood by the window with a glass of water in his hand. No alcohol. He stopped drinking after Ama's death. On the large screen tablet beside him, his banking app glowed softly. Transfer successful, $10,000. Same message. Same routine. His assistant had already gone home. The penthouse felt empty, too empty. Kwame sighed and rubbed his temples. 5 years, and the pain still felt fresh. His phone buzzed. A message from Madam Eunice. "God bless you, my son." Nothing more. No questions about Kwame's health. No mention of her granddaughter. No warmth. Just those words. Kwame never complained. Grief makes people cold, he told himself. Later that night, his young daughter Zuri walked into the living room in her pajamas. She was 10 now, smart, quiet, observant. "Daddy," she said softly, "why do you always look sad on this day?" Kwame knelt down and smiled gently. "It's nothing, my princess." She didn't believe him. "You always send money, then you stare at the city like you're looking for someone." Kwame's heart tightened. Children see more than adults think. He hugged her. "Go to bed, Zuri." She nodded, but turned back at the door. "Mommy would want you to smile." That sentence stayed with him long after she fell asleep. The next morning, something small, almost invisible, happened. Kwame's private banker, Mr. Samuel Okoye, called him. "Sir," Samuel said carefully, "there's nothing wrong, but I noticed unusual activity in the account you send the monthly support to." Kwame frowned. "Unusual how?" Samuel hesitated. "There are large withdrawals, very fast transfers, patterns that don't match an elderly woman living quietly." Kwame felt a strange chill. Madam Eunice always said she lived simply. "Ignore it," Kwame replied after a pause. "It's family." Samuel respected him too much to argue. But once the call ended, Kwame felt something he hadn't felt in years. Doubt. That night, unable to sleep, Kwame opened a small wooden box he kept locked in his study. Inside were Ama's old things. Her ring. A scarf. Hospital papers. At the bottom, a folded note written in her handwriting. Or so he thought. Kwame stared at it longer than usual. Something felt off. The handwriting looked slightly different. He compared it to an old birthday card Ama once wrote him. They didn't match. His heart began to beat faster. "No," he whispered. "I'm tired. That's all." But deep inside, a quiet voice asked, What if everything you believe is wrong? Kwame closed the box slowly. For the first time in 5 years, he didn't feel only grief. He felt fear. Kwame Adeyemi thought he was honoring a promise. But what if his money wasn't going to who he believed? And what if his wife's death wasn't as simple as everyone said? Kwame Adeyemi did not sleep that night. The quiet of the penthouse felt heavier than usual, like the walls were hiding secrets. Every sound, the soft hum of the air conditioner, the distant traffic below, felt louder, sharper. That handwriting. It would not leave his mind. At dawn, Kwame sat at his desk, the old birthday card from Alma on one side, the hospital note on the other. He compared every curve, every stroke. They were similar. But not the same. Kwame closed his eyes. Maybe the illness changed her writing, he whispered to himself. That explanation should have comforted him. It didn't. By 7 a.m., he was already dressed. No meetings. No assistants. Just him and the truth he was afraid to face. He called Samuel Okoye again. I need full details on that account, Kwame said quietly. Every transfer. Every withdrawal. Every destination. There was a pause on the line. Sir, are you sure? Samuel asked carefully. Kwame's voice hardened. Yes. An hour later, Samuel arrived at the penthouse with a secure tablet. They sat across from each other. This account, Samuel began, pointing at the screen, receives the $10,000 monthly transfer. But within hours, most of the money is moved again. Moved where? Kwame asked. Samuel zoomed in. To multiple accounts. Some business-related. Some personal. And one, very unusual. Kwame leaned forward. What do you mean unusual? Samuel hesitated. It's registered to a woman in her early 30s. Not Madame Eunice. Kwame felt his chest tighten. A caretaker, he asked. No, Samuel replied. The account lists her as, family. Silence filled the room. Kwame stood up suddenly. That's impossible, he said. Madame Eunice lives alone. Samuel swallowed. Sir, according to public records, she doesn't. Kwame's heart began to pound. Samuel tapped the screen again, bringing up an address. A property in a quiet town outside Kumasi, he said. Purchased 3 years ago. Paid in full. Cash. Kwame recognized the payment trail immediately. His money. For whom? Kwame asked slowly. Samuel looked up. For a woman named Lydia Mensah. Kwame's blood ran cold. Mensah. Alma's family name. Who is she? Kwame asked. Samuel hesitated again. Officially, she is listed as Madame Eunice's niece. Kwame exhaled sharply. Unofficially, he pressed. Samuel's voice dropped. Unofficially, there are documents suggesting she may be Alma's daughter. The room spun. That's not possible, Kwame said, his voice barely audible. Alma and I, we had Zuri. We never, he stopped. A memory surfaced. Alma had been pregnant once before. Years earlier. Early in their marriage. She had lost the baby, or so Kwame had been told. You're saying, Kwame began, then stopped. Samuel nodded slowly. There is no medical record confirming that loss. Kwame sat down heavily. For years, he had believed his wife died after a long, painful illness. For years, he had sent money out of love. And now, why didn't I see this, he whispered. Samuel spoke gently. Because grief blinds even the strongest men. Kwame dismissed Samuel shortly after. He needed to think. He needed air. By afternoon, Kwame was driving alone toward Kumasi. No bodyguards. No announcements. Just a man chasing answers. The road stretched long and quiet. With every mile, memories flooded back, Ama's smiles, her silences, the way she avoided certain questions near the end. Was she hiding something from me? As he approached the address Samuel gave him, Kwame's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The house came into view. Small. Neat. Fresh paint. Not the home of a poor grieving old woman. Kwame parked across the street and watched. After a few minutes, the door opened. A young woman stepped out. She looked familiar. Too familiar. Same eyes. Same nose. Same dimple on the left cheek. Kwame's breath caught. Then, a little girl ran out after her, laughing. She looked about 5 years old. And she looked exactly like Ama. Kwame felt his knees weaken. Across the street, the young woman bent down and hugged the child. "My love," she said softly, "don't run too far." Kwame couldn't hear anything else. His ears rang. His heart pounded. If this was true, then everything he believed about his wife's death, about his generosity, about his sacrifice, was built on a lie. And the worst part? The lie might have been told by the one person he trusted the most. Madame Eunice. Kwame started the car. Not to leave, but to confront the truth. Kwame came looking for answers about money. But what he was about to discover involved a hidden child, a staged death, and a betrayal that cut deeper than grief. Kwame Adeyemi sat in his car for several minutes, unable to move. Across the street, the small house looked peaceful. Ordinary. Almost innocent. Birds chirped. A breeze moved the curtains slightly. It looked like the kind of place where nothing dark could live. And yet, Kwame felt like he was staring at the center of the biggest lie of his life. His wife. Her death. 5 years of loyalty, grief, and money. All shaking. He finally stepped out of the car. Each step toward the house felt heavier than the last. His mind raced, trying to build explanations, any explanation that didn't break his heart completely. Maybe Lydia really was a niece. Maybe the child just looked similar. Maybe this was all coincidence. But deep down, Kwame knew. When he reached the gate, his hand hovered in the air before knocking. For a moment, he almost turned away. Then the door opened. Madame Eunice stood there. She froze when she saw him. Her eyes widened, not with happiness, not with surprise, but with fear. "My son," she said, forcing a smile. "You didn't tell me you were coming." Kwame stepped inside without answering. The house smelled clean. Fresh food on the stove. Family photos on the wall. Photos that stopped him cold. Alma. Older than he remembered. Standing beside Lydia. Holding the little girl. Alive. His chest tightened. "Explain," Kwame said quietly, pointing at the photo. Madame Eunice's hands began to tremble. "Kwame, let us sit," she said nervously. "No," he replied firmly. "Explain. Now." She looked toward the back of the house. "Lydia," she called softly. The young woman appeared in the doorway. When her eyes met Kwame's, she gasped. "You," she whispered. "You're him." Kwame studied her closely. "You're Ama's daughter," he said. Lydia swallowed hard. "Yes." The word hit him like a punch. "Where is she?" Kwame demanded. Silence. Then, slow footsteps. From the hallway. A woman stepped forward. Kwame's world stopped. "Alma," he whispered. She looked thinner. Older. Different. But it was her. Alive. Kwame staggered back, grabbing the edge of a chair. You died, he said hoarsely. I buried you. Alma's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, she said softly. Sorry. That single word shattered him. You let me mourn you, Kwame said, his voice breaking. You let me believe you were dead. Alma couldn't meet his eyes. Madame Eunice began to cry. We did it to protect her, she said desperately. Protect her from what? Kwame shouted. Alma finally spoke. From you, she said. The room went silent. Kwame stared at her in disbelief. From me, he repeated. I loved you. Alma nodded slowly. I know. But your world was dangerous. Powerful men. Enemies. Threats. She took a shaky breath. When I got sick, I didn't trust that the doctors were telling the truth. I thought someone wanted me gone. Kwame shook his head. So you faked your death? Alma nodded. With my mother's help. We paid the hospital. We created records. I was moved quietly. Kwame felt sick. And Lydia? He asked. She was pregnant when you and I first married, Alma said. Before Zuri. Kwame closed his eyes. You told me the baby was gone. I was scared, she whispered. I didn't know how you'd react. Kwame laughed bitterly. So instead of trusting me, you destroyed me. Alma broke down. I never meant for you to suffer this long. Kwame's voice dropped dangerously low. You took my life away, he said. And every month. I sent money out of love. Madame Eunice sobbed. We never asked for more. Kwame turned to her sharply. But you never stopped it, he said. You let it continue. She couldn't deny it. Kwame looked around the room again. The home. The comfort. The life built on his grief. Do you know what you took from me? He asked. Alma whispered, forgive me. Kwame felt tears roll down his face. I don't know how, he said honestly. At that moment, a small voice came from the corner. Mama? The little girl walked toward Alma. Kwame looked down at her. She stared up at him with curious eyes. Who are you? She asked innocently. Kwame's heart cracked. He had lost a wife. And gained a truth he never asked for. Kwame finally learned the truth about his wife's death. But the biggest question remained, what would he do now, expose them, or protect the child who shared his blood? Kwame Adeyemi stood in the middle of the small living room, surrounded by the past he thought he had buried. Alma. Alive. Breathing. Standing only a few steps away from him. For a long moment, no one spoke. The little girl, Alma's child, looked from her mother to Kwame, sensing the heavy silence. She clutched Alma's dress, her small fingers trembling. Kwame knelt slowly so his eyes were level with hers. What is your name? He asked gently. The girl hesitated, then answered softly, Nia. The name struck him like lightning. Alma had once told him, years ago, that if they ever had another daughter, she would name her Nia. Kwame swallowed hard. How old are you, Nia? He asked. 5, she replied, holding up her fingers proudly. 5 years. The same number of years Alma had been dead. Kwame stood up again, his legs unsteady. So this is what my money paid for, he said quietly, looking around the room. Not luxury. Not greed. But silence. Madame Eunice wiped her tears. Kwame, please, we never wanted to hurt you. You succeeded anyway, Kwame replied calmly. Alma stepped forward. I was afraid, she said. Afraid of your world. Afraid of your enemies. Afraid of losing my children. Kwame looked at her. And what about me, he asked. Was I not worth trusting? Alma broke down completely. I didn't think you would understand, she cried. You were always surrounded by power and danger. Kwame let out a slow, painful breath. I gave you love, he said. And you answered with fear. Silence filled the room again. Then Kwame spoke words none of them expected. I'm not calling the police, he said. Madame Eunice gasped in relief. Alma looked up sharply. You're not. No, Kwame said. Because there's a child here. And she didn't choose any of this. He looked at Nia again, who was now quietly watching him. But, he continued firmly, everything changes from today. Alma nodded quickly. Anything. We'll do anything. Kwame shook his head. Not for me. For the truth. He turned to Madame Eunice. You will return every false document, he said. Every fake record. Every lie. She nodded, terrified. And you, he said to Alma, will stop hiding. Alma's face filled with fear. If people find out, they will, Kwame interrupted. Because lies rot everything they touch. Alma looked down. Kwame reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. I'm taking Nia for ice cream, he said suddenly. Everyone froze. What? Alma asked. Kwame looked at her calmly. I missed 5 years of her life, he said. I won't miss today. Nia's eyes lit up. Ice cream? Kwame smiled faintly. Yes. Alma hesitated, then nodded slowly. Kwame held out his hand. After a brief pause, Nia took it. That simple touch did something to him. For the first time since Alma's death, Kwame felt something other than grief or anger. He felt responsibility. They walked to a small shop nearby. Kwame bought Nia chocolate ice cream. She laughed when it dripped onto her fingers. You're funny, she said. Kwame smiled sadly. So I've been told. On the drive back, Nia fell asleep in the back seat. Kwame watched her through the mirror. A child he never knew existed. A life hidden from him. A truth born from lies. Back at the house, Kwame spoke quietly to Alma. I will continue supporting Nia, he said. She is innocent. Alma nodded tearfully. But I will not live a lie, Kwame continued. And I will not pretend this didn't destroy me. Alma whispered, can you ever forgive me? Kwame looked away. I don't know, he answered honestly. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a journey. He turned to leave. As he reached the door, Alma spoke again. Kwame, what will you tell Zuri? Kwame stopped. That question cut deeper than any other. I will tell her the truth, he said quietly. Because she deserves better than secrets. He walked out. That night, Kwame sat beside Zuri's bed as she slept. He watched her chest rise and fall, wondering how many truths a child could carry. Tomorrow, everything would change. Not just for him. But for both his daughters. Kwame chose the child over revenge. But telling his daughter Zuri the truth would test him more than losing his wife ever did. Kwame Adeyemi sat on the edge of his bed as dawn light crept into the room. He had faced hostile takeovers, courtroom battles, and political threats, but nothing had ever frightened him like the conversation he was about to have with his daughter. Zuri. She was 10 now. Old enough to feel the truth. Too young to deserve the pain it carried. When she woke, Kwame took her to the kitchen and made her breakfast himself. Pancakes. Too many. Burned on one side. She smiled anyway. Daddy, she said gently, you don't usually cook. He smiled back, though his chest felt tight. Today is special. They sat at the table. Kwame folded his hands. There's something important I need to tell you, he said. Zuri's smile faded. Children always know. Is it about mommy? She asked quietly. Kwame closed his eyes for a brief moment. Yes. He spoke slowly. Simply. Carefully, like placing fragile glass on a table. Your mother didn't die the way we were told, he said. She was very afraid. She made a bad decision. And she hid. Zuri frowned. She's alive? Kwame nodded. Zuri stared at him, searching his face for a joke. There was none. And the little girl? She asked. The one you met? Kwame swallowed. She's your sister. Silence. Zuri didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just sat there, processing a world that had suddenly doubled in size. Did mommy not love us? She asked finally. That question broke him. She loved you very much, Kwame said, his voice shaking. But fear can make people forget how to be brave. Zuri looked down at her plate. Can I meet her? Kwame hesitated, then nodded. Yes. When you're ready. Zuri took a deep breath. I think. I want to be ready. Later that week, the meeting happened quietly, no lawyers, no cameras, no announcements. Two sisters met for the first time in a small garden. Zuri brought a book. Nia brought a toy. They didn't need explanations. Children understand hearts before words. Alma stood at a distance, trembling. Madame Eunice wept silently. Kwame watched it all, his past and future standing in the same frame. Alma approached him cautiously. Thank you, she whispered. Kwame didn't answer. Not because he hated her, but because forgiveness hadn't caught up with responsibility yet. That night, Kwame made a final decision. He ended the monthly $10,000 transfers. Instead, he created two transparent trust funds, one for Zuri, one for Nia. Education. Healthcare. Security. No secrets. No manipulation. He also issued a private legal statement correcting the false death records. No public shame. No revenge. Just truth. People in his inner circle were shocked. You're letting them walk free? An advisor asked. Kwame answered calmly, I'm choosing the children over my pride. Months passed. Alma stayed away from the spotlight. She began therapy. She worked. She faced consequences, not from courts, but from conscience. Madame Eunice returned the remaining funds quietly. And Kwame? Kwame healed slowly. One evening, as he watched Zuri and Nia laugh together, Zuri turned to him. Daddy, she said, I'm glad you didn't stop being kind. Kwame felt tears rise. Kindness had cost him years. But it had also saved him from becoming bitter. He finally understood something simple and powerful: money can support lies, but only truth can support love. Sometimes, the greatest betrayal doesn't come from enemies, it comes from fear. And sometimes, the greatest strength is choosing compassion when revenge feels easier. If this story moved you, remember this: kindness is never wasted. It always comes back, in a form you don't expect.